then you gotta love game. This week, Frags picks apart Assassin's Creed 3. We delve into the unknown with a beautiful unfinished swan. And it's all the latest games that deserve a spot on your shelf. Prepare to have your mind blown. This is Game. Well, hello there, happy chappies, and welcome to Game. Once again, we're going to bring you the latest developments in the gaming stratosphere. And for those of you that enjoyed watching me quake in my boots last week, well, we've got a horrific surprise in store for you. Just so you know, we've succeeded in packing this show so tight with gaming goodness, we almost had to leave me out of it. I did say almost. Anyway, time for our weekly update of this hot off the press edition of the headlines. Top of the news this week, remember this guy? That's right, Borderlands' unofficial robot mascot Claptrap has been up and about, and it seems like the little fella is making some waves on the internet. Gearbox Software have just announced that the pint-sized box of bolts will be getting his very own web series, brand new webisodes filled with all the wackiness and tongue-in-cheek humor that the fans have come to love. Set to feature all new content, the show chronicles the adventures of Claptrap as he takes on the role of a pushy director on the production set of Borderlands 2. Now, the new episodes are set to hit early next month, but if you're into video game humor, you may want to check out the original 4-part series, which is available on YouTube on the Gearbox Software channel. Next up, from a rusty machine to the glitz and glamour of Hollywood. Looking to make the Need for Speed brand a household name, game makers EA have announced that the car racing series is set to come screeching onto the big screen. In an announcement, the company confirmed that a new Need for Speed movie is currently in pre-production, with filming set to begin early next year. Now, interestingly enough, the man set to take the lead role in the upcoming NFS movie is none other than Aaron Paul, better known to avid series aficionados as Jesse from Breaking Bad. Now, it'll be interesting to see how this new film sets itself apart from other similar street racing-infused blockbusters like the Fast and Furious, but whatever, it's Jesse! And in our final bit of info, if you've been eagerly awaiting the release of Ubisoft's upcoming titles like Splinter Cell, Blacklist, and the recently announced Watch Dogs, well, here's some good news. Instead of twiddling your thumbs in anticipation, how would you like to work for the very studio in charge of all those amazing games? At a time when many game companies are facing massive layoffs, it seems like one company is going the other way. Ubisoft Reflections has just announced that they will be hiring talents to fill over 40 key permanent roles, everything from experienced programmers, game designers, and even artists. Looking to raise their staff count to around 200 people for their upcoming projects, the appointment sounds like a dream job. Only warning for the action fans applying, remember, Ubisoft Reflections make Just Dance as well.
Just Dance 4!
I would so apply for a position with those guys if only I knew about game design. Yeah, maybe, I tell you what, I'll just stick to my day job. But hey, if you've got the skills, you know what you need to do. And speaking of Ubisoft, 3 years in the making, and it's finally here. The latest installment of Assassin's Creed has hit the shelves and has been so well received, it became Ubisoft's biggest launch ever. So it was no surprise when Frags picked up his controller and went to work picking apart Assassin's Creed 3.
Hey ho! Frags here in the Big Time Travelers. Welcome to this edition of Play. Because for today's game and review, we set the DeLorean back to the year 1775.
My fight has thrust me into something much greater.
In your haste to save the world, take care you don't destroy it.
Telling the tale of a hatchet man caught up in the war between the European colonists and the Native American people of the land, this is Assassin's Creed 3. The latest chapter in the series of historically based action games, the AC titles have for years captured the collective imagination of gamers all across the world, taking us through thousands of years of history, from the Crusades right through to the Italian Renaissance. But for part 3, instead of 12th century Jerusalem or Renaissance era Rome, this time around, all the action moves to colonial America as we step into the leather leggings of an all-new hero. Following the exploits of a love child of an English nobleman and a Native American tribeswoman, AC3 has you play as Radunagedon, a man fighting for the freedom of his people during one of the most tumultuous periods in history, the American Revolution.
We will never back down, because a life without freedom is not a life worth living.
But aside from the change in setting, what other revolutionary changes can gamers look forward to?
Give us liberty or give us death.
Well, let's find out. Okay, so first up, if you've tried your hand at any of the previous games in the series, you'll know that one of the core strengths of the AC games has always been its story.
The Templars are nothing if not resourceful. You should have heeded my warning.
Now, while the past games have been great at offering an entertaining historical tour, Assassin's Creed 3 changes things up, allowing you to live the life of your assassin, from a doe-eyed child of the forest right into adulthood and his transformation into one of the central characters in the revolution.
What have you done?
When my people go to war, a hatchet is buried into a post to signify its start.
You could have used a tree.
And what I really liked about this change to a more personal story was not only does it help cement the connection that you feel towards your character, but the developers have also used this time to introduce all new gameplay additions. As a child, you'll pick up essential life skills like foraging the forest, sneaking up on prey, to climbing trees, to the point that you're good enough to perform straight-out sprints through the forest canopy. But the best new addition, in my opinion, was the inclusion of naval combat for the first time ever.
She'll fetch 12 knots in a stiff gale. Ne'er a ship from here to Singapore can outrun her on her best day.
Now, these sections are awe-inspiring, with some of the best representations of waves and wind ever in a video game, as you try your very best to avoid oncoming enemy fire, while dodging and weaving your vessel into prime cannon firing range for some much-deserved revenge. Attack! Now, for open-world games in general, it's often been said that the environment plays a central role in delivering the experience, and Assassin's Creed 3 really helps drive this point home. From snow-covered mountains to blood-soaked battlefields and through the crowded streets of early colonial-era American states like Boston and New York, all the new environments are beautiful and more easy to traverse than ever before, making the process of getting from A to B a whole lot more enjoyable. And finally, if you're the kind of person who likes their video games to last a while, I'm glad to say that Assassin's Creed 3 comes packed with content and should keep you thoroughly engaged for a few weekends at least. The main storyline alone is worth a good 25 to 30 hours. And that's not even touching on side quests like trading animals' skins, climbing up towers to synchronize viewpoints, or the bounty of hidden collectibles which you have to chase down to board games that you can gamble your money on. And when you're done with that, there's even multiplayer. Now, on the flip side, while I did like most of the changes they made to this year's sequel, AC3 is not a perfect game by any means. First off, the voice acting can be a little hit and miss, a first for the Assassin's Creed games. Now, I know huge pains were taken to ensure the authenticity of the language, but while the bits spoken in Native American tongue may be accurate, they often lack any sense of emotion. Also, combat is still as simplistic as ever, with the whole system relying on a simple 2-button combo of block and attack. Now, I never did understand this decision, especially for a game which revolves around stealth. But let's just say that our hero is never outgunned or outknifed, even if he's totally surrounded. Also, technically, bugs are pretty common and range from little graphical annoyances like floating guns after a firefight, down to cases of characters being stuck in the environment. And with AC3 pushing the current generation of consoles to its absolute limits, frame rates can often hover in the single-digit range, especially when running through crowded towns, a rather big blip on this otherwise beautiful game. You know, as someone who's not American, I was not really expecting this year's Assassin's Creed to draw me in with its story, but boy was I wrong. Now, while it's true that I probably didn't relate to the historical significance of events like the Boston Tea Party or Paul Revere's Midnight Ride as much as, say, someone who grew up with these men as figureheads, the personal story of a biracial boy trying to wrestle with his identity more than sucked me in. With all the tweaks to the gameplay, AC3 represents a culmination of lessons learned from the past 4 games, and if this is your first go, is really the most complete Creed title that you can get your hands on.
I see.
Thanks, Frags. Now, hopefully when it launches on the Wii U later this month, we'll see a greater depth of gameplay, failing which the ever-visible map will come in handy, I'm sure. Right then, it's time for us to shoot off for a quick break, but stick around, because you know what? I don't want to be left alone when the horror special hits. And we've also got an inside look at a canvas that appears to be blank, but sucks you into a world of the unknown. That's up next on Game. Welcome back to Game. Now, I know we're a little late for Halloween and all that, but the guys on the Game team thought it was hilarious to watch me squirm in my chair. So, much to my disappointment, and I'm sure to your amusement, we've put together a little compilation that I totally would not recommend watching if you're alone in a dark room. You have been warned.
It's doom and gloom in our post-Halloween roundup as we take a look at a couple of blood-curdling titles guaranteed to give you a case of the chills. And to begin our lurid list, we start things off with a case of survival horror in Amnesia, A Machine for Pigs. An indirect sequel to one of the most critically acclaimed horror games of the last decade, Part 2 of the Amnesia series brings us back to London, the year 1899. In this unsettling environment, you take on the role of a wealthy industrialist named Oswald Mandist, a man stuck in a coma after a disastrous expedition leaves him in a deep sleep. Now, whilst in limbo, you have terrible nightmares of a dark machine, only to find out upon waking that months have passed. The machine built in the darkness of your thoughts, chilling reality. A first-person game without any weapons, expect a large serving of shocks, as well as aspects of puzzle solving and exploration as you make your way down an underground labyrinth filled with all manner of occult technology. A title which you should definitely play with the lights out. Amnesia, A Machine for Pigs, is set to release early next year. Moving on from passive running around, time to ramp up the action. And for that, it's a trip to the remote alpines of Colorado and an asylum for the criminally insane in Outlast. A first-person horror game from a few ex-Ubisoft developers, people who've worked on titles like Prince of Persia as well as Assassin's Creed. This creepy concoction puts you in the shoes of a journalist as he investigates mysterious rumors surrounding an abandoned facility. But I hope you got your running shoes on, cause get caught out. And Outlast quickly transitions from stealth to a full-out fear-inducing emotional roller coaster as terrifying monsters take on the hunt. Built with the sole aim of making you crap your pants in fear, will you make it to the heart of the asylum and discover the secrets within? Outlast your competition when the full game hits sometime next year. And finally, to end off our list of panic-inducing pixel pushers, we check in with our first look at a brand new motion-centric game from the mad minds over at Sony. This is Until Dawn. Following the exploits of 8 teenagers who gather on a remote mountain to commemorate the anniversary of a friend's death, things start to take a turn for the strange when a killer begins stalking the group as you take on multiple characters, all trying to make it through the longest night of their lives. With a game mechanic which uses the PlayStation Move controller as a flashlight to illuminate the otherwise pitch-black forest, do you have what it takes to face your fear? Due for release sometime next year, all you have to do is survive until dawn.
Like I said, so not a fan. If you could actually see my arms, the goosebumps I have right now. But seriously, if you're a fan of that kind of thing, using the PS Move as a flashlight, you could literally have your friend's life in your hands. So anyway, from dark corners to vast white spaces, we move to a game that leaves plenty to the imagination. But we'll let the giant sparrow tell you more as we go inside the Unfinished Swan.
The story of The Unfinished Swan is a story about an orphaned boy, Monroe, who has lost his mother. And the last thing that she has left in the world is this painting of a swan that she never finished. And one night the swan gets up out of the painting and wanders into this fantastic world. And Monroe follows the swan and in an attempt to catch it, an attempt to really hold on to the last thing he has of his mother's. And then along the way, he learns more about the different worlds that he is wandering through, and at the end, hopefully, something about himself.
It's a first-person painting game, and in the beginning of the game, the player starts out in a completely white world, and they have to throw paintballs to figure out what's around them.
Our paint splatting, that's really the central piece of tech that we've spent the most time on trying to really polish and make look as realistic but also as stylized as possible.
When I'm designing a level, I usually have kind of a free rein to put anything in, and then there's a process where we revise and I talk to Ian about what fits, what doesn't.
Different levels has different art styles and different gameplays that are very unique. The style is like a hand-drawn style.
A lot of the work is just conceptual, so like I draw a lot. I doodle all the time and have whiteboards. I guess I draw my inspiration from a lot of like classic stories, like myths and stuff I'm really interested in.
We try to be different. We try to be simple and very creative, and I think that makes The Unfinished Swan very contrast out of other games out there.
The inspiration for the music comes from the characters in the game. There's 2 main characters. You play as this little boy, Monroe, and you also get introduced to this preposterously self-absorbed king that inhabits the world that you discover.
The music as you're playing is constantly evolving, so it's never quite the same. You'll never play this game twice and hear quite the same balance of background music. And the idea there was that the music isn't just background music. It's part of the world. It's part of how you feel when you play it. It's part of how your character feels. We didn't want those 2 things to be separate. We wanted to feel like it was all one experience. We relied a lot on plucked instruments like the harp, marimba, which tends to accompany Monroe, plucked strings, live strings. We chose synthesizer sounds that really complemented our acoustic palette.
I don't really know where video games are headed. All I know is that I hope that wherever they're headed, there's still places for games like The Unfinished Swan to exist, because I think they're fantastic and I think they grow the medium.
It always amazes me when we come across games that have such deep meanings. The storyline in The Unfinished Swan is so melancholy, yet hopefully you'll be able to find the happy ending. All right, before I tear up, let's go for a quick break, but don't you be going anywhere. Because when we return, we preview some titles that we think deserve your dollar and a look at some serious fancy footwork from FIFA 13. That's up next on Game. name and you're watching Game, welcome back. Sick and tired of the same games? Looking for something to light up your life? Well, here's the cure. It's a roundup of the best titles coming to a console or PC near you. It's a Big Bang.
Opening this week's edition of The Bang, we begin with some murder and mayhem with everyone's favorite killer for hire, Agent 47. Get set for more stealth and sneaking around. This is Hitman Absolution. This time around, the guys at IO Interactive have placed good old 47 at the center of a dangerous conspiracy, as he finds himself being betrayed by the people he trusts. Featuring something called Instinct Mode, the 5th entry in the Hitman series will allow our hero to see through walls, and even predict how enemies will patrol a given location. Very much like the detective mode function in Batman's Arkham Asylum. And because of this, your victims never see you coming, leading to some brutally efficient stealth kills. So if you're up for a little murder in the moonlight, Hitman Absolution infiltrates game stores later this month. Moving forward, time to travel backwards in time. Set in an alternate history, we go back to Earth, the year 1912, as we attempt a search and rescue mission in BioShock Infinite. Now, gamers sick to death of the slightly soggy underwater city of Rapture will be glad to know that Part 3 will be set in a new location, with Infinite taking place in a brand new game world, a floating city called Columbia. Exploring the chaos that results when strong ideals are taken to the extreme, you play Agent Booker DeWitt, a man tasked with seeking out a young woman named Elizabeth, who has been held captive for the last 12 years, confined to a prison by a hulking beast called the Songbird. Now, if you tried your hand at the first two titles, one interesting gameplay tweak is that because of the new open environment, BioShock Infinite will no longer be restricted to tight enclosed spaces, with players free to move about the city via the Skyline, a series of pretty awesome looking roller coasters. Just be careful of the odd fireball and you'll be fine. Also, look out for the return of elemental and telekinetic powers, as you and Elizabeth make use of some rather, how shall we say, interesting methods to take care of your enemies. So keep your fingers pointed heavenwards, cause that little glint in the sky will soon be upon us when BioShock Infinite sees the light come February. And closing up our lineup of delicious titles soon to delight your gaming taste buds, it's a slice of exquisite samurai sushi served up by the fine folks at Team Ninja. It's the return of Ryu Hayabusa in Ninja Gaiden 3, Razor's Edge. This enhanced version brings updated graphics to the table, along with new enemy types and improved AI. But the biggest addition has to be the female ninja, Ayane, a new playable character with her own set of deadly moves. Exclusive to the Wii U, Razor's Edge features even more ninja weapons that you can use to mutilate and decapitate your enemies. Perfect for those who have an insatiable appetite for juggling your foes mid-air in style. Announced at last year's E3, the wait for more blood and butchery is nearly over, with the game out later this month.
So you may have played that one on your Xbox or PlayStation, but it's a case of violence reborn with Ninja Gaiden 3 on the Wii U. It really is great to see so many games coming out with Wii U compatibility. And with that, it's time for us to pull the plug. Remember to check out our website at espnstar.com/game for past episodes, or you can like us on facebook.com/ESSGame for great gaming info from us as well as others. And there's also Twitter if you're able to keep it to 140 characters. Follow us at ESSGame. For now, though, we're going to leave you with some great goals courtesy of FIFA 13. Got your own sweet playouts? Well, post them up on Facebook. We'd love to see them. And with that, I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.